There's so many wonderful, vivid imageries in the readings that we have. And delving into them is sort of like going head first into a cornucopia of some of the most amazing symbolism and lexicon that we have. Here on Ash Wednesday, we've concluded the journey of the season of Epiphany when we've been following this star since Christmas. You know, kind of right after Christmas, we started following this amazing journey of light in the midst of darkness. And it ends up that it shows us Christ. And that the event of Christmas is not supposed to be something that happened once upon a time, on an evening long ago, but it's meant to represent for us how Christ is invited through our lives and in our lives to be born again and again into every moment when we have the opportunity to share with others, or even back to ourselves, that Christ is with us, has been born to us, and continues to be alive through us in the Holy Spirit, reminding one another that Christ dwells behind the eyes of each person we see, and that each person has gifts given to them by God and is a gift to the world. So here, as we launch into the season of Lent, these 40 holy days, we're reminded that there is kind of a sacredness associated with the early church with even that number 40, 40 being affiliated with spiritual journey, and that it takes some process of time. For some of us in our lives, probably most of us, our spiritual journey unfolds throughout every day that we're alive. And when we're 60 or 70 or 80, we reflect back and realize that the journey never really quite ever got to a conclusion, that we're still always on it. And so in this season of Lent, Ash Wednesday does something kind of magical with a particular symbol that we hold on to throughout these 40 days. If you remember, on Palm Sunday, that kind of introduces Holy Week, that last week of the 40 days, where our story of faith is told quite intensively. That Palm Sunday takes us to the moment of Jesus and his disciples entering into Jerusalem, but most particularly through the image of waving palms and palm trees representing the royal house of David. That there's a message in that palm waving and in the palm branches themselves, that there is a statement of faith, that those who are with Jesus in the time who knew him as a person on earth, and we who continue to follow him generation after generation, that we too make a statement on Palm Sunday of declaring Christ is our King, or our Messiah is our beloved one that we are willing to follow into Jerusalem. Now those same palms that we then, if you remember on Palm Sunday, many of us have the opportunity, our altar guild makes us these wonderful folded crosses, and Linda and others and have sat down many a time before Holy Week to make those palm crosses, and our youth group too. And then at the end of Palm Sunday, as people leave, we make sure that they have the opportunity to take one of those with them. So representing two things then, the kingship and messiahship of Christ in the palm, but also the recognition of the cross, the sacrifice that the most valuable being is making on behalf of all of us in the world. We carry those palm crosses, many of us, throughout the coming year. I know people who have them in their wallets, or in their purses, or on their dashboard, or in their glove compartment, somewhere around the house, maybe tucked in a photo or a ribbon, or even on the refrigerator under a magnet. But we keep those with us, many of us, to remind ourselves of that two-fold, two-sided aspect of our faith, of both joy and sorrow. And then, in some week before we get back to the season of Lent, often our altar guilds will remind us to bring our palms and our palm crosses back. And for some of us, it's kind of hard to give up this thing back. And we give it away again so that they can be burned. And in that burning, in that sacrifice, that sort of mini Holocaust, we get the ashes that we use on Ash Wednesday. And again, the spirit or ghost of that palm cross comes back to us for a moment this evening when the sign of the cross with the ashes of the palms are made on our forehead. And that cross is to remind us that sort of the joy or the lifetime immortality that we have is such a temporary thing. And somehow its impermanence makes it that much more sacred, that much more something that we need to pay attention to and live intentionally by, and to seek God in that entire journey. And suddenly, that symbol of 40 days of the spiritual journey represents our entire lifetime, the aspect and brackets of our mortal life on this earth. The ashes remind us intentionally of our mortality. And a little bit like in the early church, the first people who were friends with Christ, who loved him so much, have a time period from when they have walked to Jerusalem with great joy and hope and expectation, only to encounter the experience of devastation and loss and horror and trauma, and watching brutality after brutality, and all their dreams and hopes and vision of the kingdom of heaven just dying in front of them. And then they go into the upper room. And that's the space, the upper room, the journey that happens spiritually in the community in that upper room from the moment that Christ is killed until they understand and meet him again as a resurrected being. In that in-between time, they don't know what's going to happen. They have no idea that what they're about to experience is going to be so amazing. And in that time of fear, when their own lives are at risk, the early community of the first century quite intentionally wanted to remember that time as an important piece of journey of the community of faith. Because from the moment that Christ died, up until at least the year 325, the Christian community experienced persecution after persecution after persecution, including Paul, who was ultimately killed, and St. Stephen, the first person martyred, a deacon of the church. And we hear that consolation in Paul's letter to the Corinthians that we just heard tonight, where he's saying, all these people think we're gone and dead, and yet we're very much here. We're even kind of notorious, and we suffer a lot, but we're so joyful. And it speaks to that two-sided experience again of the palm branch and the cross. So here on Ash Wednesday, I wanted to remind us of how Episcopalians really embrace the spirituality of science and a little bit the scientific methodology of faith. Because faith really does depend on its twin, its opposition of doubt. Faith comes wedded to doubt. Because doubt makes us, in those moments of challenge, of genuine suffering, of genuine loss, of those experiences as the first community had, of watching just everything be demolished. That in those moments when we're very honest with ourselves, we ask the questions, why is this happening? Is there a God? Am I foolish to believe this? What is this idea of afterlife? What is this mortality? And those questions are an essential part of the experience of faith. Because it's different from knowledge, different from knowing that every time we do a scientific experiment in a certain way, it'll come to the same outcome every time. Life is not like that. It is not so predictable all the time. Things we don't expect happen. They can be joyous or devastating. And that is the journey of the 40 days. How we walk with Christ in that. And keeping along the idea of this ash that's placed on our forehead that reminds us of mortality, I share a quote from Carl Sagan, who many of us may have heard in his first version of the series called Cosmos, before Neil deGrasse Tyson got a hold of it. But Carl Sagan had an amazing way of being poetic and spiritual and amazed at the nature of the physical cosmos. And he wrote this: the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in the apple pies we eat, were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of star stuff. Now, connect that to the journey of Epiphany, which we have just concluded last week. With Sunday, we concluded the whole series of stories that reminded us that we are star followers. But today, on Ash Wednesday, when we contemplate the ashes, the dust of that which endures, we are called to remind ourselves of the amazing things that God can do with dust. That is all God needs. As much as we think we need much, much more, that is all God needs. And we have that as sort of living stars right now. The star of Epiphany, that indicates where the Christ child dwells, is also not a once upon a time mythical element. It is actually supposed to indicate to us a right now reality. That we are stars. In us shines the light of Christ, the presence of the indwelling Holy Spirit. Christ, who said to us, the kingdom of God, the heaven, is not something far away and transient and distant and untouchable, but here and now and in you and possible and radiating in the deepest darkness when we become aware that we are God bearers. We have light and stars within us. And I want to share also a quote that I heard very recently that I can almost imagine if Jesus were here with us in our time, we might hear something like this, and I really hear it this way. If you are at home and you are sitting on your couch and you're watching this right now, all I have to say is that this is hard work. I've worked hard for a long time, and it's not about winning. What it's all about is not giving up. If you have a dream, fight for it. There's a discipline for passion. And it's not about how many times you get rejected, or you fall down, or you're beaten up. It's about how many times you stand up and are brave and you keep on going. We hear that in Paul's letter to the Corinthians. We hear that in the teachings of Christ. There's a discipline for passion. And it's not about how many times you get rejected, and how many times you fall down, or how many times you're beaten up. It's about how many times you stand up and are brave and you keep going. And who said that last week? Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga said it in her Oscar acceptance speech, talking about the award that she got for the best original song that she called Shallow. She understands the spiritual aspect, whether she would even identify with Christian faith or not. The universality of the human and mortal experience that Christ himself knew by becoming fully human. Knew in weeping in the Garden of Gethsemane, knew in mourning the loss of his friend Lazarus, knew in the utter terror of sweating blood at the prospect of his own death. Knew when he is imagined and seen as though he was talking to Moses and Elijah about his death. I came across a poem that I will conclude with sharing with you that seems to me to summarize all of this journey that we are embarking upon tonight for that symbolic 40 days that represents a lifetime. All those days you felt like dust, like dirt, as if all you had to do was turn your face toward the wind and be scattered to the four directions, or swept away by the smallest breath as insubstantial? Did you not know what the Holy One can do with dust? This is the day we freely say that we are scorched. This is the hour we are marked by what has made it through the burning. This is the moment we ask for the blessing that lives within the ancient ashes, that makes its home inside the soil of this sacred earth. So let us be marked, not for sorrow, and let us be marked, not for shame. Let us be marked, not for false humility or for thinking we are less than we really are, but for claiming what God can do within the dust, within the dirt, within the stuff of which the world is made, and the stars that blaze in our bones, and the galaxies that spiral inside the smudge we bear. Let us walk these 40 days, asking ourselves in every moment, what is God asking us to let go of, so that we can be the spiral arms of the inner galaxy, a light of stars, a community of galaxy, to illumine the way for a world that lives in darkness and is in so much need of exactly what you bear.